The Lost Story of Genesis.
I will now tell you the story of the riddles of the Sphinx and pyramids insofar as I have learned about them. This will not be an easy chapter to write, for my communications on this score are numerous and have been extracted from miscellaneous scripts. I am therefore fitting them together as concisely as I can, linking them with comments wherever it is possible. I will start by quoting a passage from Isaiah 19:20. In that day shall there be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar at the border thereof to the Lord. And it shall be for a sign, and for a witness unto the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt. I quote this here because my occult teaching has shown me that the Great Sphinx and Pyramids of Giza are what are referred to as a pillar at the border thereof to the Lord. One night the voice said, "An altar to the Lord in the midst of Egypt refers to a shrine unto the voice of God, the temple of the inner mysteries at Thebes." This is as yet undiscovered. I will now explain how within the pyramidal Masonic center of Giza are hidden all the laws of life and government, how within its secret halls is hidden a social and economic system of government yet to be discovered. The origin of life and creation is there enshrined, and when the appointed time comes and man is deemed fit to handle these stupendous forces of nature, then and only then will his eyes be opened. It is commonly assumed by Egyptologists that the pyramids are the tombs of the pharaohs. The general public has fallen into the error of agreeing with the assumption because it is quoted as being the last word of archaeological experts. I am afraid that experts through the centuries have led many thousands astray, for their views seem to act like an anesthetic to the minds of the public, who cease to reason for themselves. For instance, you will find it clearly stated in many books on Egyptology that the face of the Sphinx resembles Chephrine. Footnote 2. Latest archaeological data suggests that the Sphinx is of much earlier origin than the 4th dynasty. Usetsen, Amenemhat III, and other pharaohs. As a matter of fact, it can only be clearly seen from the illustration on plate 8 that the features of the Sphinx are so battered as to be quite unrecognizable and could just as easily be a whole dynasty of pharaohs. This fact is only made the more plain because each expert tries to make the Sphinx resemble his particular pet pharaoh in order that his theories may fit his imagination. I have a host of their conflicting data in support of my statements. The Sphinx resembles nobody, therefore do not listen to what is said in that direction. Thothmes IV, circa 1421, 18th dynasty, knew that it existed in the reign of Cheops, Chephrine's predecessor, but he did not know who or what it represented. Regarding the Great Pyramid, whoever built it had a tremendous knowledge of astronomy. Egyptian legends tell us that a certain Mizraim was a great astronomer and was the first pharaoh of Egypt. Footnote 1. Genesis chapter 10, verse 6 tells us that Mizraim was a son of Ham, who was a son of Noah. Verse 32 says also of these sons of Noah, "By these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood." Secondly, these pyramids have always been singularly devoid of mummies. In fact, the 1928-29 excavations of Mr. Cecil Firth at Saqqara revealed a chamber under the step pyramid which was empty, except for some very fine plates and ornaments, and a statement was published to the effect that the chamber had obviously never been broken into and robbed, so that the body must have been buried elsewhere. Footnote 1. During the 1953 to 54 excavations at Saqqara, Dr. Gronheim found a further unfinished pyramid in the supposed burial chamber, of which was a sealed but empty sarcophagus. Dr. Gronheim's theory is that this was a dummy burial in connection with the Heb-Sed ceremony or some such ritual. This supports statements made in the Osirian scripts that these pyramids were not tombs but initiation temples. The chamber was intact because it was sealed up. Let us give the ancient rulers of Egypt credit for having a little common sense, for certainly they never would have built such great structures like these pyramids just for the fun of deluding robbers, for it is said by some authorities that they deliberately built these pyramidal structures and placed their bodies elsewhere. I want my readers to realize that I am quoting statements made. We will take for a moment the three great pyramids of Giza and see what we can learn from them, and also see if we cannot suitably connect them with the same intelligence that fashioned the Sphinx. It is quite clear that the three great pyramids of Giza were not built at random, but follow out a definite structural plan. The three pyramids lie almost in a line, so that if a rod were passed through the northeast angle of the Great Pyramid and projected in a southwesterly direction, it would pass through the northeast and southwest angles of the second or middle pyramid. Then if we project this rod still further to the southwest, we find that the third and smallest pyramid is just off this line, being situated a little more to the south. Another point that must be taken into consideration is the fact that the pyramids are all square to the north, south, east, and west. The positions of these pyramids places them in a diagonal line running northeast and southwest behind the Sphinx, which is situated east and west, with the face towards the east. If a line is taken from the head of the Sphinx and drawn through the hindquarters, it will eventually meet the base of the second pyramid, also in the center of its eastern face. As a matter of fact, it falls to the south of the center line. If we look for a moment at the elevation of the pyramids, we shall at once observe that they stand on much higher ground than the Sphinx, and that they are built on a rocky plateau. Let us try to find some similarity between the three pyramids. Firstly, each pyramid had a temple placed opposite the eastern baseline. Ruins of these temples, connected with the two smaller pyramids, still remain, and causeways, now badly ruined, have been excavated by the late Dr. Salim Hassan and connect these pyramids with the environs of the Sphinx. In fact, the causeway leading down from the middle pyramid actually runs along the southern side of the basin in which the Sphinx sits and disappears into the so-called Temple of the Sphinx, really the Temple of Purification. Then let us ask, why was there a temple erected by the side of the Sphinx? Surely it is quite plain that the temple has some connection with the Sphinx, as it has with the pyramid. Recent excavations have proved that this is so. There is much of importance to be discovered at the Sphinx which will throw light upon many things which are at present buried in sand. The construction of the Sphinx shows it to be more than the mere effigy of a king, as many Egyptologists have declared it to be. The man in the street has no idea of the vast size of the creature. For instance, the average man standing between the paws does not come up to their tops. The Osirian scripts tell me that this huge and imposing colossus is the ornament surmounting a hall, which communicates with the pyramids by radiating underground passages. Footnote 1. In March 1935, the late Dr. Salim Hassan discovered a subterranean passage connecting the Great and Second Pyramids. It was excavated out of the living rock. Daily Telegraph, March 4th, 1935. And this connection is made very strong by the fact that deep shafts communicating with chambers have been found below the pyramids, but so far have not been investigated further. The strange double square shaft behind the Sphinx and called Campbell's Tomb is another mystery as yet unsolved. I have an account before me, dated 1931, which doubts that this shaft was ever originally built as a tomb. Footnote 2. Most likely this is an air shaft supplying the main passageway leading from the Sphinx to the Great Pyramid. So far, archaeology has absolutely failed to prove its theory that the Sphinx and pyramids are 4th dynasty products. The question at once arises, why should this elaborate scheme have been laid out? The answer is that emigrants from Atlantis were people governed by the laws of cosmic masonry, and those who landed in Egypt built centers of Masonic initiation from which the country was administered. To these huge Masonic cities of initiation, all who aspired to advanced and important positions in the land had to go to pass their degrees. The ritual priests and grand masters, together with all holding office, were buried in the environs of the Masonic city. Many signs and symbols of modern masonry have been handed down from the priest governors of these ancient centers.
My explanation will no doubt be scoffed at in many quarters, but I have already shown how archaeologists have had to eat their words concerning many of the written and published prophecies given to me. I had never been to Egypt when these prophecies were made, and they have been published and recorded some 28 years now. Archaeologists can only write what they have gleaned from the ruined monuments of this wonderful civilization. 150 years ago, nothing was able to be read of the inscriptions found on the tombs and temples until the finding of the famous Rosetta Stone, which gave the first clues of how to translate the Egyptian hieroglyphs. My prophecies are being steadily proved, and as the sand is being cleared from the pyramids and Sphinx, a huge sacerdotal city is being unearthed, whilst among other discoveries is one in the vicinity of the Sphinx recorded by me in 1926. It happened as follows. One night in May 1926, after retiring to bed, I went in my sleep to the Sphinx. I wandered about until I found myself in a very old tomb. I understood that the tomb was of a priest of the initiation whose name was Heliomore or Helioyer. I saw the sarcophagus and various articles of funerary equipment. I remember clearly seeing a sistrum which seemed to form part of a headdress. I was then told that the tomb would soon be opened when excavations near the Sphinx were continued. I was conscious all through this experience and knew that I must write it down. I did so the next morning and took steps to have it recorded by my publishers and also by other important persons, amongst whom was the late Dr. Peter Miles, who signed the document and who wrote the prefaces to 2 of my books. In February 1930, the Daily Mail published a photograph of the Sphinx and also the excavation of this tomb. It stated that excavations near the Sphinx had uncovered the tomb of Ra-Uir. I must confess that I did not take much notice until I had a communication telling me that Ra-Uir and Helioyer were one and the same, and that Helioyer was the Greek equivalent of Ra-Uir. Ra denotes the sun in Egyptian and Helios in Greek. Thus was the prophecy fulfilled, and anyone who is skeptical can be given absolute proof. When excavations have further developed at the Sphinx, they will show that my writings and sketches, recorded in 1926 to 27, are faithfully being followed out. The old top layer of steps then existing has already been removed, and it is becoming quite clear that the Sphinx is more than the mere effigy of a king. The Sphinx is the symbol of the great master mason, gazing serenely out over the eastern desert to greet the rising of the sun, Ra-Atum. Footnote 1. Excavations at the Sphinx were stopped before the temple, upon the roof of which it sits was found. In an inscription of the 4th dynasty, mention is made of the Sphinx as being a monument whose origin was lost in the night of time, that it had been found by chance in that reign, buried beneath the desert sands, where it had been long forgotten. Quoted from Father Lenormand Hist d'Orient. The 4th dynasty dates back to 4000 BC. Judge then the age of the Sphinx. Eventually a temple will be discovered underground in the rear of the Sphinx, which connects with other chambers and a great temple or grand chamber under the Great Pyramid. There, the divine cosmic mysteries will be revealed to those appointed, and we shall realize that with all our vaunted knowledge, we know nothing compared with the great knowledge hidden there. My communications tell me that the Great Pyramid was started by one Horhotep, the first priest king of Egypt, and one of the emigrants from the submerged continent of Atlantis. It seems certain that he can be identified with Prince Mizraim, to whom I have referred further back. I should like to record here that on the 11th of April, 1927, my teacher gave me the following. Within the pyramid are the original writings of Genesis. I, a Ptolemy, knew the law of the cosmos. I was the senior incarnate master of my time. After my visions in Syria, I knew all the secrets of the pyramid. I hid my manuscripts in the secret passages below it. These will be found, but will be unreadable, and only those who know the initiate symbols of speech can retranslate them. Nevertheless, I was commanded to write my chronicles in such a way that existing and future languages would not be able to supply the meanings conveyed by the sacred hieroglyphics, so that only those who are entrusted with their secrets can receive their full significance. Moreover, as moral speech has no equivalent to express the symbols, the knowledge in manuscript cannot be portrayed to those not entitled to read them. Osiris. Footnote 2. The sight of the symbols will reawaken in the mind of the initiate the knowledge that will enable him to transmit them into ordinary language.